So I was in a sucky mood. And so I was watching Music Choice on Spectrum. And if you don't know Music Choice is the channel where there's like tons of channels and they play like all different types of music, from dance and pop and oldies. It's great. It's great. I love it. I always forget about it because it's in the 900s. So I was watching it and I was watching the R&B oldies channel and Jackson's Enjoy Yourself was on. I keep on forgetting how Michael Jackson made the Triumph album after Off the Wall. It's like that. We always forget because people jump from Off the Wall to Thriller, and it's like, no, there was Triumph in between that. So Enjoy Yourself went off, and then the beginning riffs of A Night to Remember by Shalamar came on. I'm telling you, I love music. I love music. Music is a joy for me. But there's a few songs that brings a smile to my face. Like, you know that scene in The Grinch where the Grinch's heart is all shriveled up and then joy comes into his life and the heart just gets big and it almost kills him. That's when every time I hear A Night to Remember by Shalamar, whatever sucky mood I'm in, I become delighted. I become joyful. And I wish I can tell you like this grand story. It's like, oh my God, my first girlfriend, or I went to homecoming, or I had my first kiss. No, that song, every time I hear it, and the song's 40 plus years old, it doesn't matter what year it is. It doesn't matter if I'm in college. It doesn't matter if I had a job. It doesn't matter what, it doesn't matter. I love that song. I think it's produced by Leon Silvers. It's on Solar Records. The beginning riffs of that song is amazing. I just saw today that someone said that James Ingram played bass on it. I don't know how true that is. Like, James Ingram is from Akron, Ohio, and Howard Hewett from Shalamar is from Akron, Ohio. So that could be true. I don't know. I have to research that as there's new information. But man, the beginning riffs of that song, Jody Watley's vocals, Howard Hewitt's vocals are just great. Like, they don't like each other for whatever reason. And I don't know why. At this stage, but their voices are magical. Like, the whole groove of it. The video is campy. The video is old and it's cheap. They're playing each other when they were young, playing each other when they were old. But it's cool, man. It was a cool 1982 vibe. The extended version. Baby, darling. Oh, I love that song. And the beautiful thing about that song is, okay, so you have the riff and it starts, and you have Jody Watley's vocals. Jody Watley has very underrated vocals. There's a joy to Jody Watley's vocal. The only other person that sonically I hear that same type of joy is like the first time I heard A. Marie's Why Don't We Fall in Love? And when she first sang it, I said, man, she sounds just like Jody Watley. There was a joyfulness in A. Marie's vocal on that, on Why Don't We Fall in Love, that was very, very reminiscent of Jody Watley. And then Howard kicks in. Jeffrey Daniels is Jeffrey Daniels. He's in the background dancing. But man, it's just, and I remember like on Girlfriends, like there was a point where if there was like a dance at the end of a show or end of a movie, A Night to Remember would come on. Shalamar was one of those groups where they never had a big album, right? They weren't like The Barge. When The Barge first came out, they had two really great albums. Shalamar was never like that. Like, Shalamar, they put out albums, but they always had like one or two songs each album. Like, they have enough songs for a greatest hit. So Night to Remember, For the Lover of You, later on they had Dead Giveaway, Games, Take That to the Bank, make that move. Like, they got songs. They just never had a big album. And when they first started off, so the story, if you don't know the story, Dick Griffey formed Solar Records with Don Cornelius. Don Cornelius was head of creator of Soul Train. They created Solar together, and then they put together acts. Jeffrey Daniels and Jody Watley were dancers on Soul Train. Jody could actually sing. Jeffrey was a choreographer. And then they had another lead singer when they first started off. That guy left for whatever reason. Howard Hewett, who was from Akron. He was in LA and he auditioned, and then he got the gig. And they formed, and then they had Shalamar, but then he was, they reformed Shalamar, and then they started having hits. And maybe, I think there was always a bit of a rub because Jody and Watley was so close. Jody and Jeffrey Daniels were so close. They were friends. So they were so close. And then Howard was just kind of just jumping into the group. And maybe there was a beef there. But I hate the fact that they're not touring together as a trio. Like Jody's off doing her own thing, and it's Jody Watley, and she does Shalamar songs, and Jeffrey Daniels and Howard Hewett are performing at Shalamar, and they have another lead singer. But every time I see this, they're leaving so much money on the table. I always go back to Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac, Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks were a couple. They were Buckingham Nicks. Fleetwood Mac was his own thing. Buckingham Nicks joins Fleetwood Mac. You have the McVies, I think John McVie and Christy McVie and Mick Fleetwood. They have hits. They have hits. Buckingham Nicks, Stevie and Lindsey breaks up. Stevie has an affair with Mick Fleetwood. It was short, but they hooked up. The McVies, they divorced. Christy McVie ends up dating the light guy that's they're on tour with. All this stuff, all this drama in this group. And then they break up. But then back in the mid-90s, they get back together. The McVies are still divorced, but they're fine. Lindsey and Stevie never get back together, but they're fine. Lindsey had hooked up with Mick, but they're fine. They had all this stuff going on in this group, and they got back together in the mid-90s, and they're still touring. Sadly, Christy McVie has passed away. They kicked out Lindsey again, but Lindsey could be a little bit nutty, but I'm sure he'll be back soon. But if Fleetwood Mac can do all that stuff and get back together and make all this money, I don't know why Shalamar can't get back together. Now, again, I think part of it is there's beef between Jody and Howard, and I feel like Jody probably felt like Howard disrespected her in a lot of ways, and he probably did. I'm not sure, but he probably did. Jody's best revenge is when she became a pop queen. So Jody and Jeffrey Lee Shalamar, the last album they were on, basically Howard was by himself, and then he brings in Mickey Free and then another young lady, and that's when they get their giveaway on the Footloose soundtrack. So then LA and Babyface did Games for them, and then they would eventually break up, and then Howard Hewett would have his own solo career. Like that one track, I'm For Real, love that track. Yes, Amen. Say amen, I'm for real. Howard Hewitt's fantastic. However, on the other side, Jody Watley is kind of floating along. Janet Jackson's Control becomes a hit. And then right after that, you have other women who was doing dance pop breaking out. So then that's where you get a Paula Abdul, a Vanessa Williams, and especially a Jody Watley. Jody Watley hooks up with Andra Simone, Prince's old bandmate. And then they just produce like a string of hits. They have Looking for a New Love. We don't hear that song enough. Looking for a New Love is fantastic. Still a Thrill, very underrated song. She would later do Friends with Rakim. And You Are My Everything. You Are My Everything is like one of those pop ballads that we don't hear enough anymore. It's like, you are my everything. I love Jody Watley, man. Jody Watley was great. So her best revenge against Howard Hewett was like, hey, Howard, you're doing okay on the R&B charts with your few hits. Look at me. I am Jody Watley. I'm up there with Janet Jackson. I'm like one of the biggest pop stars in the world, and she was at one point. So you would think after all these years, like whatever beef that Jody has with Howard, it could be squashed by now, but it's not. Man, I just wish they were. If they could do a residency, they could do a string. They could do a string of tours. They could do a House of Blues tours. They can do intimate night with Shalamar. Because I think part of it is Howard likes to sing in slow songs and Jody like the upbeat stuff. They can work that out. Come on, Jody. Come on, Howard. Because I'm sure Jeffrey Daniels, no matter what, Jeffrey Daniels is game. But yeah, man, I love Shalamar. They're great. But a night to remember. Whenever I'm in a bad mood, I got to remind myself. Put it on A Night to Remember. That song, the 5-minute version is so good. So my question to you is, what song or songs, because I have others, but that's the one that comes to mind. What song or songs, whenever you're in a bad mood and you're just feeling down and out and there's no hope, what song, as soon as you hear, you go like this, what is this? Oh, this is going to be a good night. I feel that way also like Lenny Kravitz, Are You Going My Way? Anything by DMX. But when I'm listening to DMX, I want to break stuff. But if I want to have a loving heart and soul in my belly, it's A Night to Remember. Get ready tonight. We're going to make to A Night to Remember. Ah, so good.